Hey guys, I'm Sophie, and as usual I'm gonna get right straight to the point. In today's tutorial we're gonna be using a 12mm crochet hook for this chunky iPad/tablet sleeve. We're also gonna need some scissors as well as a tapestry needle. Another thing which you are going to need is a measuring tape as well as stitch markers. One works just fine. This tutorial is totally customizable, therefore you just have to begin by taking measurements of your device. The length of my device is 10 inches and it is 25.5, just almost at 26 centimeters. Now measuring the opposite size, it is 16 centimeters and in inches it is 6.5. We're going to begin by making a slip knot. You can make a slip knot however way you prefer. And we'll be using a 12mm crochet hook. Well, that's what I'll be using. I'm going to insert my crochet hook in the slip knot and begin by making a chain of 12. Once again, this tutorial is totally customizable, so you can make longer chains if your device is a bit big, and you can make shorter chains if your device is a little bit small. If you want to gauge to see if the chain is going to be long enough, I'd say the first thing that you can do is to stretch the chain a little bit because t-shirt yarn stretches. I'm gonna skip the first chain and make a single crochet in the second chain from the hook. After working a single crochet, I'm gonna continue working single crochets across until I have a total of 11 single crochets because I started off with a chain of 12. Now I'm working a single crochet in the last stitch, and after working a single crochet you're gonna take your device and just try to see if the yarn has stretched a little bit after working the first row of single crochets. Just also bear in mind that if you're using t-shirt yarn, it does stretch over time. I'm happy with my 11 single crochets in total, so what I'm gonna do is to chain one, turn my work, and make a single crochet in each and every stitch across. So right now I'm actually working a single crochet in the last stitch, and what we are gonna do a little bit different about this stitch is the fact that we're gonna add an extra stitch. Therefore we're gonna have a total of 2 single crochets in the last stitch. And try to locate any stitch that's nearby and then just try to work a single crochet. It is most likely gonna be the opposite stitch, and continue to work single crochets across. You can choose to work single crochets in both loops there. I'm just gonna use the back loops so that the holes there can be a little bit smaller compared to if you were to work on both loops. And what I mean by both loops, it's not 2 strands of yarn at the same time because those technically count as one. So you can just observe closely and just see how I do it. Now I'm at the last stitch, so I'm just simply going to work 1 single crochet, and there's obviously a visible tail, so you can decide to weave it in after or just crochet with it as you go. So I'm gonna proceed to make 1 single crochet on the side stitch. So the last stitch to work on before we move on to the opposite side, it can be a little bit tricky. Just try your best to insert your crochet hook through. So what I'm gonna do now is to make single crochets in the back loop for 1 round. Another thing that actually helps me is after making 1 single crochet in the back loop to remind me the start of the new row. So I won't be slip stitching. Normally when I get to the stitch marker, I'll be making a single crochet instead of slip stitching. Hence why I need the stitch marker to remind me that this is the beginning of the row or the end of the row. For a total of 1 row, I'm gonna proceed to work single crochets in the back loop until I get to the stitch marker. This is what it looks like after working one row of single crochets in the back loop, and at this point you can choose which side you'd like for it to be, the wrong or the right side, by easily flipping your project inside out or keeping it as it is. Now carefully remove the stitch marker and work a single crochet in both loops. Now after working a single crochet on a stitch which had a stitch marker to remind us the start of the new row. Now I'm going to work single crochets in each and every stitch all around until I get to the stitch marker. Now that I've gotten to the stitch marker, I'm going to remove it and work a single crochet and then place the stitch marker back. I'm going to continue to make single crochets in each and every stitch around until I get to the stitch marker. As you can see, the tail is still there. I advise that you weave it in while it's still now, or you can decide to just leave it inside. Here I was just double checking to see if my device still fits, and it does fit. Also do bear in mind that t-shirt yarn does stretch. Just a reminder that if you're not happy with how the outside stitches look like, you can always flip your project inside out. It is best to do it before you have so many stitches because it might be a little bit difficult to flip it inside out. So basically what I'm going to be doing for the rest of the project is to continue to work in the round until I have a total of 18 rows of single crochets. And when I get to the stitch marker, I carefully remove it, work a single crochet and then place the stitch marker back, and then proceed to work in the round. The next few clips are just going to be me showing you guys the update of what the sleeve looks like. I have a total of 18 rows of single crochets. You can have more, you can have less, depending on the size of the device that you're creating this project for. After I'm content with the amount of rows which I have crocheted, in which in this case I've made a total of 18 rows, I'm going to work a slip stitch just in the last stitch before the stitch marker. While you can choose to work a slip stitch in the stitch that already has a stitch marker, I've decided to work on the stitch just before the stitch marker. And if you do decide to work a slip stitch in the stitch before the stitch marker, after working a slip stitch, place a stitch marker and then continue to make slip stitches in each and every stitch around. And another pro tip, please do not make the slip stitches very tight. Try to make them as loosely as possible. Now that I've gotten to the stitch marker, I'm going to remove it and work a slip stitch in both loops and then chain one. You can choose to work a slip stitch in 2 stitches or just the last stitch, chain one, and then fasten off. After making a chain one to secure my work, I'm going to fasten off. And this is where I actually weave in my ends. So what I do is to weave in one end at a time. This has personally been working for me, and I do prefer the metal tapestry needle because it doesn't bend easily. So this part is totally optional. What I do is to weave in one end at a time, literally anywhere where I'm able to fit in my tapestry needle. I've started with the pink one, and after I'm done weaving it in, I'm going to move on to the red one. Because this is t-shirt yarn, I try to weave it in in one stitch at a time instead of weaving in multiple stitches, as this may be a little bit difficult to pull through the tapestry needle. I'm going to continue to weave in my end until I get to the red one.